My name is Jay Heiler. I am the Chief Executive Officer of Great Hearts. Good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us for the Great Hearts National Symposium for Classical Education. We're grateful you've made time to come and contribute to this annual gathering. We want you to find fun, edification, and companionship, three things which mark us out and join us together as human beings. And of course, we want you to find them amid the pursuit of truth, goodness, and beauty. Three more things which only humans can know or long for. And therein lies the point of this work, the reason for what all of us do. We assert classical education as the highest and best form because it is that education most grounded in love and a transcendent regard for the human person. It is that education which counts and considers each soul as something dear and each life as something beautiful, if only we will honor it as such. This year as last, we gather amid expanding energy and interest around classical education, and that is a wondrous thing to see. Great Hearts began a few miles north of this spot in 2002 with 130 students in a leased church building. At that point, almost nobody knew what a classical education was, and almost nobody had access to one. That was 50 schools and about 30,000 students ago, and perhaps another 600,000 or 700,000 or so now being educated by all of you and by others who have joined in this work. That road to here and now has been built on the trust of parents. But more lately, our friends in the media have begun to join in heightened exploration around the subject, and we can expect that to continue. It seems that after that quarter century of work, and really after about 3,000 years, classical education has become an overnight success. In this new discussion of classical education, we now see it spoken of as a movement. At one point, I found myself referring to it in this way, but upon reflection, I would humbly submit that we retire the term. A few decades ago in America, there lived a well-known public intellectual by the name of Eric Hoffer. Most of you will not have heard much about him. This is an oversimplification, but think Jordan Peterson, but instead of a trained and astute Canadian psychologist, plug in a mid-20th century blue-collar, self-educated dock laborer in Los Angeles. Hoffer published several thin volumes well worth reading, including The True Believer and The Temper of Our Time. He was known as the longshoreman philosopher, and he was an occasional guest on the popular television talk shows of the day. Among his insights was that every great cause begins as a so-called movement, evolves into a business, and then quickly degenerates into a racket. 75 years on, we see a kind of movement inflation, perhaps media-driven, in which things are greatly accelerated. The business phase now is often skipped, and today things just go straight to racket while pretending to be a movement. In any case, we cannot allow classical education to devolve into anyone's racket. Further, we should consider that classical education is really not a movement at all. In fact, central to its assertion and its nature is a kind of unmovement, as in being unmoved by the latest fad or the next big thing or whatever the popular culture is next driven to raise up as an idol on the shores of modern life. But if classical education is not a movement, still less is it a mere remnant. It does not insist that we all pine for a saner past or huddle together in shelter from a darkening future. In fact, quite the opposite is true. Classical education consists in a confident claim about tomorrow, that our prospects are brightest when we're formed in a time-tested body of reason experience, and insight, moral and practical, from age to age and from place to place, from achievement and triumph to tragedy and loss. St. Augustine, in his singular way, reduced it to 4 words: ever ancient, ever new. The Romans, in their way, conjured the point into one of their pagan gods, Janus, simultaneously looking both back and forward. This is where the month that ends and begins each new year, January, gets its name. The continued growth and definition and fruition of classical education stands on honest curation of humanity's past. But at stake is the sound and upright design and creation of its future. The holders of that stake are literally innumerable, and of course, most of them, we can hope, yet to be born. The cause is universal, and the inheritance holds a share for every soul. Our audacious purposes here are to make classical education the standard for the nation, and in due course, perhaps, for all nations. If we are to achieve that vision, our charge is clear: deliver this cherished gift in faithful but varied wrappings, and give it in all places where parents and children await it. This is the great work that brings us here today, and all of us at Great Hearts are joyed to share in that work with all of you. Thank you. As we get this underway, it's my pleasure to introduce to you Mr. Jake Tawney, who, as many of you know, is our Chief Academic Officer at Great Hearts. He is both an esteemed academic leader and the best of friends, the best of fathers, the best of colleagues, and he is, along with his colleagues in our leadership team at Great Hearts, a daily source of inspiration to each one of us because of his own love for this work and his love for the family that the work is created to serve. So Jake joined us a number of years ago and has continued to evolve with time and to come to understand more and more the essential parts of leadership that a growing enterprise requires. And so he is now well beyond his early academic understandings and skill sets, and growing as all lifelong learners must grow, and as we intend them to grow through classical education. He is the living embodiment of that ethos. So Jake, he and his team are responsible for putting on this event every year. Carol McNamara, who many of you know and should get to know, holds frontline responsibility for that and has done an outstanding job in putting this event together in a loving and caring way for all of you. We are open to all constructive suggestions, criticisms, insults, anything that you would have to help us make this a better event every year for gathering, uplifting, and thickening the network of classical educators in the U.S. So with that, I introduce to you friend and colleague and Chief Academic Officer of Great Hearts, Jake Tawney.